also leads to this other thing that I want to talk about today is understanding a dream of a character. A lot of the times, guys, in this type of work, we go to the bottom, the pain of the character, but we don't allow for the dream life, what the character aspires to. And the dream life can be just as intimate. Why? If I know what my characters dream of themselves or dream for what they want is, why can that lead me to the character's pain just as much as understanding the character's pain?
It's connected.
What do you mean?
Usually the dream is something that is connected to your pain or the need.
Right. So that, in other words, what I aspire to is in connection to what I don't have. And in that feeling of what I don't have, I'm noticing the disparity between where I am and where I want to be. And that disparity has intimate, powerful effects on the human condition, and in terms of understanding it for how you can connect or find your in to that character's life. Okay? Is that clear, guys? Mm-hmm. Are there any other questions? Because this is a trick today too when you look at the piece.
That's kind of interesting because, like, I suppose, is that a way that we can also use, like, say if we're not connecting to the need and you have to go into an audition or something, can you kind of flip it?
Well, I always say, look, for me, one of the biggest things when I do character work is knowing what the character's aspirations are. It allows my into them very quickly because I can start to see the disparity between where they are and where they want to be, and that automatically gives me intimacy. Okay. Do you get me? Because I'm in a sensation, in direct connection to how far I am away from what I want.
So in a way it balances the need?
Well, I don't think it balances. I think it gives you an into it. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you can go, okay, my character, I'm trying to think of a movie where that really worked. Like, did you see Wonder? I just saw Wonder.
No, I haven't seen that one yet.
Okay, there's a moment with this kid where you can tell this kid has a very clear dream of how he wants to operate in the school. And because that dream feels so far away throughout different parts of the film, he's automatically in a pain when the circumstance of the circumstance of the scene tells him he's not going to have it. Do you get me? So it automatically leads him into an intimacy. Now, I don't know how that kid, what his training is or how he got there, but you can tell the dream is very important to him. You know, a lot of people say that the biggest example of that is Hamlet. Hamlet has a very clear dream, a very clear aspiration, and he feels so far away from that consistently with his mother, with his uncle. So he's constantly taking hits because he's not getting closer and closer to what he wants.
And that dream is having his uncle?
No, that dream is having what?
Power.
Yeah, there you go. Having power, being, not only that, but having his family be the dream of the family that he always wanted. So when his dad dies and his mother goes to his uncle, it's an absolute betrayal of what the dream he saw for himself was. Okay?
So you know how, like, there's a dream you want and there's certain things, like you said, that keep taking hits as a reminder. If it's a dream that it's never going to happen, let's say you have a disease or you wish somebody was here that's dead.
Right.
So it can't happen. Is it every time you see something that reminds you of it, it's another hit?
Yeah, the great example of that is different films where where you're still lost in a previous marriage and you're a widower and you're not able to move on because no one's going to match that person. So of course when I meet a person, even though I might be excited about them, I feel devastated because they're not who I want them to be. And the more that you're specific about a character's dream, like, you have to be very understanding the character's backstory to get their dream. So you got to know where they grew up, how they were raised, where they're from, what they would see for themselves, and then you got to remind yourself part of that dream is in connection to the intent. Right? So what is the overall super objective of the entire story? What moves this character through the entire story? Then how can that dream, come on, Sammy, then how can that dream be clarified through your imagination and specified? Do you know what I mean? Like, another great example is Godfather, right? Brando wants his kids to be wonderful children, right? Or he wants Michael to be a senator. He doesn't necessarily know what he wants for Sonny, but he wants Michael to be this type of hero that he always saw. So when he comes back from the war, he's in line for that, right? Then the minute he kills Sollozzo, that's what kills Brando, is that, oh my God, you put Michael in the situation where he could never fulfill the dream I had for him.
And every time he kills, it's a reminder.
It's a reminder. It's a reminder. So I sometimes, Sonny, you want to know, it depends really what you see for the character, what you can clarify from the overall circumstance of the entire story, what you understand from their backstory, what you see in terms of their circumstance, and then being specific about, okay, let my imagination detail from my understanding of who this person is, what they are really aspiring to and what they want.
No, my question, the reason, thank you for that, but also the reason, I woke up this morning with this feeling, and it was a feeling of, it was from last night, and I wasn't sure if I was in my need or if and then when you said dream, I realized maybe it wasn't I was in my need. Maybe I woke up because I could see the distance between where I want to go, and it was
But that would
hit
lead you to your need.
So that still leads it back, and is
Yeah.
that the same as with the character that leads? Is that what you're kind of?
Yeah, look,
getting
in other
at?
words, if I notice the disparity between where I am and where I want to be, that is a direct into how my need operates. Do you get me? Because I have a need that's in connection to something that is primal in terms of mom and dad, but also something that I am searching for in terms of what my childhood represented to me.
Yeah.
Do you get me? So in that way, there is your need also is a part of your dream, right? So I have a need for a father. So if my dream is in connection to my dad being this wonderful human being, which he, blah, 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 right? So, but, you know what I mean? So I have, that dream came from my need. So sometimes if I feel like, oh my God, I know he's never gonna be that, that can lead me into the pain. In other words, for me, when I did my prep for my need is always thinking of a perfect family. That's always my prep, to go to that vision of the Cosby Show. Because Cliff and Claire Huxtable were my ideal of a perfect family.
Yeah.
In a perfect house with perfect kids. Do you know what I mean? So every time I think about it, even right now, there's a feeling of pain and loss that leads directly to my need for a father. Do you get that?
Yeah.
So sometimes you can go, hey, look, if I know a character's dream, I can get to their need.
Yeah.
Do you know? But I still have to specify their backstory. I still have to know their circumstance to clarify and really utilize my imagination to see what they would see for themselves.
Cool.
But if you guys think about, when we talk about need, just so you guys know, need is the first fundamental tool of Batson technique. It's what is directly unfulfilled from our mother and father. It becomes a universal way in connecting you to the character at the bottom, because everything else is circumstantial. Where the character was born is different than where you were born. How you grew up was different than But at the base bottom, in direct connection to your parents, there's something unfulfilled. That unfulfilled sensation is really, in this technique, the first and foremost place you and the character can unite, right? So when we talk about a dream, we say a need is something we need done unto us, to be seen, to be heard, to be held, to be mothered, to be fathered. When we talk about it, the manifestation of that dream is really our need fulfilled. However, since we can never go back in time, right? We can never change our past. Our need always remains unfulfilled. And therefore it becomes like a heroin, like a junkie's fix, trying to get it satiated in some way. So when we look at what a dream could be, if you know the character's need, then you can see what that manifestation of that need fulfilled would look like. Do you guys understand that? If you're utilizing need. So that's the trick for that, okay?
Next question?
Yeah.
So the dream should always be something that's not attainable, right?
Well, you don't want to think it's whether it's attainable or not. It's more in the question to who and how that character was raised, grew up, what their circumstance is.
Right.
They might not see it. They might not see it as not attainable. They might see it as something that they can strive for.
Right.
But if it's not in connection to a base bottom intimacy,
Right.
that's where it can't work. Right? So in other words, if I just have a character who just wants a bunch of money, and I'm not quite sure why they do that, or where that originates inside of them intimately,
Right.
then I'm playing the idea of the money and
Right,
the fame,
right.
not the connection to it. But if I do a character who's been poor, who's been beaten, who's never had anything throughout their whole life,
Now I know why they want that bag of money.
absolutely.
Would
Absolutely.
an example of that be like where it kind of is attainable, say, even in Forrest Gump when he has the son?
Yeah.
And he wants this amazing life for his son that he thought maybe he could never have.
Right.
And so that's kind of similar, brings him back to his
Brings
own-
him back. But see, the great example with that is also the girl, right? He wanted her to stay alive. So he wanted this ideal setting, right, as you said, for the son, but he also wanted the mother there. So his dream could never ever quite get fulfilled. So that last moment by the tree where he's talking to her and the pain of, I wish you were here, Jenny, right? And how difficult that is for him is because his dream is not fulfilled. Do you get me? So that's how, and if you look at Tom Hanks, he does that well. It's one of the, even if you look at Philadelphia and the movies he's done well, he's very clear on what the character's aspirations are. He has a goal for that. Do you know what I mean? And in that, he is constantly either not getting closer, getting further away, trying to attain it, but it always leads to some level of intimacy. Whether the intimacy is authentic or not, that's a whole other question. A whole other question. Do you have a question?
Oh no, sorry.
Okay. It's okay. So yeah, I mean, I think there's there's a lot of great actors, American actors, who do that well. I think Sally Field does it well. She always. There's a great movie that she did called Places. What is it? Places of the Heart. Oh, that's horrible. I don't know this name of this movie, but she won an Oscar for it. And you can tell she's always in search. She's on a farm. Her husband died. She's there trying to make this farm work. Really, what she wants is her husband to be back alive, to have the life that they started fulfilled. It will never happen now that the husband died. So she's on that farm, and the work that she puts in to get that farm up and going is so intense because she's trying to make sure it is what her husband wanted more than it is what she wanted for herself. And that becomes very interesting to see how those moments when your dream feels further and further away, what it does for you. It's an actually adjunct to this technique that Susan and I have been developing, is how can you incorporate a character's dream in the moment-to-moment life of a scene. Because if you think about it, all the things that we aspire to play a part when we feel hurt, when we feel sad, when we feel defeated, when we feel joyous. They play a direct part in the moment-to-moment life and circumstance of a character. So it's something to think about, guys, and to start to be more and more specific about. What is your character's aspirations? Like I'm thinking for Charlie, that's a very interesting element that we already started to talk about, of how Charlie's vision of himself affects his actual pain. Do you know what I mean? And how that participates in his moment-to-moment life. So it's something to really start identifying with different characters, start playing with. You know, when you're doing your homework and really reviewing backstory, do not neglect the character's aspirations and vision. Is that clear?
Cool.
Yeah.
So if somebody has a dream of being famous, that comes from not having recognition as a kid? Or?
Well, that partly, but I would even say more, maybe it's also to make, the parents proud. Maybe it's to outshine their parents. I mean, a lot of people who have just the need to be famous are needing acknowledgement, validation, more than they are necessarily recognition. You'd have to, acknowledgement is, Mom and Dad, see, I told you I could do this.
Yeah.
Do you get me? Recognition is, oh, you're great.
Yeah.
Do you get me? Like, they could be in desperate need of something that came out of their past that they never received from their parents. Do you know what I mean? To make it more grounded in the backstory of the character. So in other words, somebody who's an orphan, if they wanted fame, their fame might be in direct connection to having their mother and father regret that you dumped me, regret that you left me. Do you get me? Regret the abandonment. So you have to be specific about how that backstory operates for the person before you get to their dream. So I got to know how they were raised. What is the sensations that they were consistently dealing with? When we talk about poverty, with Omar's question, poverty could necessarily lead to a bag of money, but also could lead to comfortability. It could lead to stability, financial stability instead of fortune. So you have to understand the character in that level of detail to know which dream to impose on them. Okay? Are there any other questions?
Nope.
Ask, guys, because this is tricky today. When you look at your scripts, so let me just tell you how this class works. We do two separate drills, excuse me. The first drill is an eyeline drill. It's an imagination drill where we're going to have you look at a spot on the wall. Omar's going to give you something to imagine. You want to really invest in your imagination as much as possible because on film, the audience only sees what you see. So the more that you invest in what he gives you, the easier it is for the audience to stay in a suspension of disbelief, of trying to see what it is you're looking at, okay? You want to invest so much that it affects your body, that it has physical resonance, okay? So when he gives you something to look at, if you're not allowing your body to connect, that means you're not investing enough in your imagination. And film is always first and foremost about your imagination, okay? We give you 3 different things to look at. Those 3 things correspond to the script we give you at the end of the drill. How they correspond or correlate is going to be up to you to determine, okay? Then we do a tension and release drill. Because on film, ease is absolute priority. So we have you squeeze your whole body, release, and scream something profane about George, who's right there. Just so you know. And then in the release, it's to release your voice, but it's also to get you out of your head and get your body loose, okay? Then we give you your sides. Then once we give you your sides, you clear set like it's an actual set so we can set up shot. Then after that, we give you about 20, 30 minutes and we call you in one by one to shoot the actual scene, okay? And then we critique and then I make fun of you. Sound good? Sound good. Okay.
Have any movies where people do the whole surprise or joy?
Well, look, I would look at The Shape of Water, man. There's a couple of moments in The Shape of Water that are just shocking because of what she's doing, what Sally Hawkins is doing. You know, there was a movie I just saw, it came out, it's an independent film, it really wasn't that good, but I saw it anyway, because I watch bad movies, just so everybody knows. But any romantic comedy you watch, they have to have surprise, they have to have joy, they have to have happiness. It really is, it's one of the things that you got to really love about Meg Ryan and Sandra Bullock, that they can get to that happy, cute shit real quick. Do you know what I mean? And you're like, oh, isn't that sweet? Do you know what I mean? Like they endear yourself to them automatically. But I would really look at The Shape of Water, Isha. There's something specific when she's in joy and when she's in pain, and how the ebb and flow of her life works. That she's so specific. The undercurrent is always hurt, as you brought up earlier. So when she gets a surprise and when she gets devastated and when she finds something that she can hold on to, you know, it really becomes beautiful. I always tell people one of the best examples of having all 3 operate is Schindler's List. At the end of Schindler's List, when they finally give him this I forgot what it was. You remember that the last moment? I forgot. They give him something, and he goes. You could see he's so overwhelmed by the pain of what they all suffered and the shame that he couldn't do more, right? And he goes and he looks around and he sees all of them, and they're all so grateful for what he did. That end, it's a beautiful end of a movie because you really get the sense of Jesus. They did achieve something, but it still wasn't enough. And the shock that he has that they gave him this gift, that because he feels completely, that he didn't do enough, completely ashamed that he didn't do enough, is really a wonderful complexity to how joy, pain, and surprise all operate at the same time. I tell people, Schindler's List, if you look at, there's a couple of moments that towards that end of the movie, I really think it's Liam Neeson is doing brilliant work throughout that film. And of course, Ralph Fiennes is genius in that as the Nazi, and how his joy operates when with the maid and the understanding of control and power is another wonderful element to see how someone who's sick and distorted, how they take in their own joy. Do you know what I mean? And how they take in their sense of power. Okay? Any other questions? Okay, let's take him through.
All right.